Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I'm your host, Daniel Dolphin. Our guest today is Mr. Wild West Taylor. West is known for his work with Mustangs and his use of brain science to affect changes in the horse. He is a regular partner and does co-clinics with Dr. Steve Peters, where West does demos and shows the effects live on a real-time horse. And they also do equine brain dissection, showing you exactly where the amygdala that was giving West hell a little while ago is. He does science-based seminars as well, has a docu-series on his work on the website, a subscription service, and occasionally agrees to do lesser-known podcasts like this one. West and his wife operate the Wild West Mustang Ranch in Utah. How are you this morning, West?
Yeah, I'm feeling good. Honestly, I'm excited. I can feel just some energy in me, and I'm like feeling like, man, let's do this. And so I'm feeling good.
I think we're going to have a pretty fun conversation. I know the phone call that I had with you, kind of the pre-meeting before this, we seem to get along real well. I think this is going to be a good one. I really do.
Me too. I've really been enjoying kind of being able to visit and talk to more people. I've kind of been down a rabbit hole for the last 15 years, and I feel like I'm just starting to come out. So good to see you, Daniel. It's good to talk to some people.
Absolutely. We're still at least 6 feet apart though, and wearing appropriate face masks and all that good stuff. So it's safe talk, right? All right. We start out everything with our lightning round questions, and Wes, these are 4 points. So you want to put your best foot forward here. What is your favorite way to relax?
Oh man, my favorite way to relax is in my sauna, dude. A hot sauna is my place. I love the heat. So I've got a sauna at my house, and I enjoy just going in there almost every night for like 20 to maybe 40 minutes. And it's quiet, it's dark. I generally don't even play any music. I'll light a candle and just sit there and just feel the heat and just breathe. And that's my favorite. That's my place.
Do you do cold therapy also, like ice baths and that kind of stuff? Or
I do, and man, that takes so much more mental work for me. Like I do a cold bath about every other month, and I know that there's guys, I should do it way more regular, but honestly, dude, it's a mental fight. Like you got to talk yourself into that. It's like walking into the sauna is like easy. Like, okay, get in that freaking ice bath, dude. There is a battle going on to go do that for me, but it's intense. I do love it as well, but yeah, much less frequent.
One of my favorite wisdom sayings is from Mark Twain, and it was you should eat a live frog first thing in the morning and nothing bad will happen to you for the rest of the day. So that's kind of what that ice bath is like. After that, it's all going to be downhill, right?
It is. And
go ahead.
Remind me, we can talk about the ice bath on horses later. I got a great story about that, so we can bring that up later.
Cool. Morning or evening?
Gosh, I'm going morning.
Okay.
Morning's my time, man. I like getting up early, and I have my coffee time, and it's kind of a quote, a little chat we have around at the ranch. Anybody ask me too detailed of a question, I'll say, you know what? I'll talk about that after coffee tomorrow. So that's my way of dealing with that.
I'm a big fan of using the back burner on my mind sometimes, that's going to be a pain in the answer right now, but let me put it on the back burner, and in 6 hours, I can rattle off an answer easily. Yeah. I guess that's mental laziness is all that is.
Well, a lot of times that ends up with whatever the question is. By the time I'm done with coffee, it might have even resolved itself, or it just went away. So I was like, you know what? That pause, just giving it time, it just kind of handles.
There you go. Bay or sorrel?
Oh, man. I'm going to go bay.
I'm a little surprised. I would say a lot of these questions wind up 50-50, but I would bet 80% of people pick bay, which kind of surprises me.
Yeah.
Does pineapple belong on pizza?
Hell yeah. In my world, it does. That's my favorite, man. That is my favorite.
Do you have a favorite way to teach? So do you prefer like you do some virtual coaching type stuff like this, or do you prefer the in-person stuff, or do you like to write it or shoot a video, or what's your...
Tell you what, I love to be in front of a crowd or be in front of people. I mean, that used to be my nemesis. Like, there's no way in hell you get me to talk in front of people, but over the years in transformation, kind of doing my own work. And now with the horses, you get me and a horse in front of people, I love it. Like that is my space, man. I feel so comfortable there.
I know what you mean. I was never comfortable with crowds, but you get to a point where I guess the introverted, you start overcoming it a little bit. You start feeling the energy of the crowd. And to me,
Yeah.
the hardest thing is I only get to talk for an hour. You know, shit, that hour's gone in about 5 minutes, right? So
Yep. I know it. Yep.
tell us something unexpected about you. I have a feeling you've got a pretty deep chest to reach into for that one. So
Oh gosh, something unexpected. I think maybe what might be the most unexpected, if I look at it from that angle, is how I used to live my life. Like I was so introverted. Like I didn't enjoy people. I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to be around people. People just annoyed me. I was frustrated and anxious, and now, I'm the absolute polar opposite of that. So that is, even for myself now, I kind of look back at that time, and that just feels kind of unexpected even to myself. Like, wow, yep, I really did used to be like that. Like I used to just hide. Like I was totally hiding in my life for a long time.
so here's a little tangent off of that. So the real definition of introversion and extroversion is where you get your energy, kind of what recharges your battery versus what drains it. So like for myself, I don't have any problem being at a 2, 3, 4 day event or whatever and talking to people from 7 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. But that drive home, when that's over, I crash. And if my wife is with me, like she understands, like I'm going to turn on the radio or a podcast, don't talk to me.
Yep.
I gotta
Yep.
recharge now. Are you that way
Yep.
still?
Yep. I call that a vulnerability hangover.
Okay. All
Yep.
right.
Like after I'm done with a retreat weekend or a presentation or a clinic or whatever it is. Yeah. When it's over, man, I want to either go back to the hotel and the hot tub and I want to be alone. Like I need quietness. I just need to just unwind it all. I get, it's such charging doing all that work. And then when it's done, yep, I need a couple of days to crash.
Well, I understand exactly what you mean there. Well, here's one I'm honestly not sure the answer of for you. Thoughts or feelings?
Oh gosh. I'm gonna go with thoughts, and my reasoning on that is our thoughts in turn kind of create our feelings. What we think about, we bring about. And so to me, being aware of my thoughts or being really conscious of what am I thinking or what was I thinking before, XYZ happened. So yeah, my thoughts. I'll go with thoughts.
Okay. I think there's some stuff for us to talk about a little bit later with that one. Would you say that you are decisive or indecisive?
I'm indecisive, man. I'll just let it I'll let it float until, oh shit, that has to be done now. Okay, let's make a decision. But man, I'm like just all right, yeah, okay, whatever. And I'll let it float, man.
So, do you know Jim Masterson, the Masterson method guy?
I met him just briefly, but I know a little bit about his work. But yeah.
You would like him a lot, but the two of you are the fastest people to answer indecisive that I've ever had. Both of you decisively said that you're indecisive, which
Yeah.
I find endlessly fascinating. Um, what year did music end for you?
Oh my gosh, that's awesome question. What year did music end for me? Yeah, I'm gonna say like right after high school. Like once I got out of high school or done, like I just don't listen to music ever. I
Okay.
just like I can do an 8 hour drive, nothing. I won't turn nothing on.
I listen to it less and less. I used to not be that way, but now I am that way. You got more to think about these days, right? And
Yeah,
so you need that time
yeah.
to think and
It,
process.
yep, yep.
Do you have a favorite piece of tack or horse related tool?
Dude, the thing I'm the nitpickiest about, and I find this in myself constantly over and over and over, halter and lead rope. Like I have got to have, in my opinion, quality halter and lead rope. Like I won't even hold your horse with one of those little piece of crap nylon, super lightweight cotton click on freaking lead ropes you get at the tack store for $5. I won't even hold your horse. Won't even do it.
I can, yes. I'm right there with you. Um, do you have a favorite book or movie?
Oh gosh, I don't read a lot. I don't read hardly at all. So I'm going to say no on the book. Favorite movie, man. I don't know. I'll go with this one. The first one that kind of came into my mind, but Rocky. Back when I was a kid and like Rocky was in theaters, I remember coming out of that movie theater, man, I was on fire, like punching my buddies, and I was like, dude, I don't know, man. I just felt so motivated, inspired, cranked up, turned up. I mean, that's just what came into my mind. I can see myself outside of the theater. I think it was in Payson, Utah, and I was just a young kid, but that movie just I loved it at that
Okay,
time. Yeah. Yeah.
sure. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh man. I'm gonna go caramel pecan.
Okay. I like the way you said pecan too. If you go too far north or too far east, it becomes a pecan. And I always have to tell those people that a pecan is something you take with you to the deer stand. The nut that falls from the tree is a pecan.
Well, I'm glad I got that right there because that's how we say it here is a pecan.
Do you have a favorite dinosaur or deep sea creature?
Favorite dinosaur, deep sea creature. Nope. I mean, I didn't really ever get into dinosaurs or just never really clicked with me. And deep sea stuff just kind of scares me. So that's weird, but I'm going with a no on that. Neither one.
Okay. And this is the last question. Have you ever had a UFO encounter?
I've had some strange encounters, man. I've had some strange visitors from I don't know what, but a UFO. I'm going to say no. Not that I would describe it that way.
Not even a balloon from China or anything like
Yeah, I've heard of something like that, but
that? All
nope,
right.
nothing. Don't think anything UFO, but I've had some strange encounters.
Well, West, you are our reigning high point champion. That's 694 points for you.
Woo!
Um,
Damn,
so that entitles you to either a genuine compliment or an awkward silence, your choice.
dude, I want a participation trophy. Come on, Daniel. Give me the participation trophy.
They're on back order with us right now. I'm sorry, but I think it's
All
going to be an indefinite back order as well. So,
right, all right. Well, I'll take the compliment then. I'll take that one.
okay. Well, I have to say that I find you to be a very enthusiastic and open-minded sort of a guy, and it's just impossible not to gravitate toward people like that really seem to have that zest and passion for what they're doing. And you but you don't do it in a way that's like cheesy or over the top or anything like that. It comes across as very genuine. So I
Man,
got to commend you on that.
thank you. Thank you. I'll take it.
Well, Wes, why don't you give us sort of the 30,000-foot view of what it is that you do?
Man, that's a good loaded question because I kind of question myself every morning over coffee. What the hell am I doing today? It's a defined experience every day, Daniel. But um, big scope. I'm enjoying doing online one-on-one personal coaching with people, and I'm using my horsemanship, kind of the research that I've done scientifically with the horses and overlaying that with humans. I'm finding that weirdly satisfying. Like I love to just really have some authentic conversations with people and really just kind of getting deep with whatever their beliefs are and how their autonomic system works. I'm really loving that coaching. I'm also doing online coaching, kind of evaluations with people and their horses. That's been just fascinating for me to watch some video of people with their horses. And then we sit down and have the conversation about what's going on. So fun to just watch that person kind of when they're watching their own video, like, oh, Wes, I can see exactly what you mean now, but I couldn't see that in myself this whole time. But you pointed out it's completely obvious. And that's fun. It is so fun to just have those conversations. Um, I'm loving and enjoying this season here, 2023. I'm doing a lot of, I want to do more public type events. Being in the public, we're going to be at the Rocky Mountain Horse Expo in a few weeks. Super excited to present there. So I just love talking and sharing and teaching. I guess that's really what it is now. I don't take in client horses this season. I'm not going to have any kind of in-house client horses. I'm really enjoying being out in front of people, whatever that is. I'm pretty open to what that looks like this year and just rolling with that flow.
Cool. I like it. Well, I know you sort of had a shift in your life about 15 years ago that got you into this rabbit hole that, as you described it. What kind of was the impetus that
Man,
sent you
yeah.
down this path?
Well, prior to me being in horses, and so that was just 15 years ago. So I've not always been a horse guy. I didn't grow up necessarily on a ranch, and my dad and my grandpa weren't horse guys by any means. And so it's a new venture for me anyway in the last 15 years. But prior to that, I was a IT and information technology contractor. So I was the guy that would, hook up your cable TV, your internet, your phone service, your satellite TV, made all that work at hotels and apartments, big commercial projects. I was kind of in that sector, and I enjoyed it. I was good at it. I liked it because it was a specialized field. I kind of liked being in a little specialized kind of niche market rather than doing what everybody else is doing. So that was very rewarding for me to be the fiber optic splicer on a job. That just felt good to me. I liked that because it was so new at the time. Fiber optics were just coming onto the scene, and being the guy that was installing that was rewarding to me. But as time went on, anyway, we had a good financial cleansing out here in our market. I imagine a little bit in other markets as well in 2008 and '09. Basically, I lost everything in about a 30-day window. All of my contracts canceled. They didn't renew, or they just flat out, denied and refused to pay the contracts. Everything changed. Our whole financial market just changed overnight. And I thought I was maybe going to kind of be able to skate past it, but man, the pressure just kept building, and I ended up, and I say lose everything. I mean, the only thing I didn't lose was my wife and kids. It was the only thing I did not lose. But every other materialistic or label I had put on myself at that time just got taken away from me. And that was that was a personal, really a hard thing for me, because I think I just always wanted to be a grown up. Like, I always wanted to do adult things. And so I grew up and I kind of had my own business of doing things. And my biggest fear was to be a failure. That, I just held that in my mind, that was just my biggest fear, was to be viewed as a failure. And so when I lost everything, when that happened, having the repo man come and knock on your door and take your shit, man, that was tough, because that to me was the beginning of my definition of failure. And I couldn't postpone it. I couldn't put it off. It was happening. It was happening faster than I could fix it. And I had never experienced that in my life before. I had never had a firestorm like that happen to me so fast that I couldn't find a way out. But it was my own fault. I was definitely over leveraged on credit. I mean, that was the beginning of my demise, is that I was running my business, my entire operation was on credit, but credit was abundant. Hell, I bought a $300,000 home on a signature loan back in the day. I mean, nothing down. The guy's like, "How much money did you make?" I'm like, "How much do I need to make to buy this house?" He told me the number. I wrote it down. I mean, that's how you got a home back in that time period. I mean, everybody was buying a home. Anyway, it all come crashing down.
That was
And I
kind
got,
of the reason, huh?
yeah, right. Yeah. No kidding. And so when that all come crashing down, we had to move out of our house. I couldn't afford to live in our house. All of our stuff was gone. And I didn't even have a truck. I didn't have a horse trailer. We sold what horses I did have at that time. And I was just kind of a rodeo dad. I was just kind of the 4-H rodeo dad. That's all I knew. Like, I couldn't even win you at a game of horse in basketball. I had no chance of even doing that. That's how much horse talent I had. So it all got gone. And I remember standing with my wife and just, we'd been married about 25 years at the time. And I was standing there holding her hand, and we're moving out of our house. Like all of our stuff, I borrowed a horse trailer that still had, horse shit in the bottom of it. I didn't even spray it out good before I put all my stuff in there, what I had left, because we were moving in a hurry. We had to get out. And we were leaving our house here in St. George, and I was moving back to my family's ranch property, a little ranch property in Utah that's now mine. But standing there in the driveway to my wife, holding her hand, I was like, babe, I've been the last 25 years going for it. Like I have been going for it, trying to find my happiness and find our joy and find, success by whatever we define that as. And I was like, man, after 25 years of doing that, honey, here we are with nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, I had to borrow a truck and borrow a horse trailer to move my stuff. Like we didn't even have a car. I was like, I tell you, man, that spun me out. Like that really was a dark moment for me because I viewed it as failure. I took that on as like, oh, you failed, dude. You totally failed. You can't even live in your house. Your freaking neighbors are bringing you groceries because they know you don't have any, which I loved them for doing. But oh my God, talk about a humbling, humiliating experience all at the same time for me. I mean, it was tough. And so anyway, we left there. I was like 25 years of going for it, baby. I had more money in my pocket as a 17-year-old kid when I married you in high school than I do now, 25 years later. Oh, geez. That was a defining moment.
Well, if she stayed with you, then it sounds like you really did have some assets left in your life.
Great point. Great point. The true value I still had. I absolutely still had the true value of life. My wife and my kids. And so, yeah, we moved back to my grandfather had recently passed away. And so his little ranch house property was available. He'd been a bachelor there for 10 years. So I got to move into a bachelor ranch house, which isn't the best environment to move your wife and kids into. It was dirty and run down. But anyway, we just needed somewhere to regroup. I just needed somewhere to try to redefine who am I? Because everything I had identified with was materialistic. I identified with my house, my truck, my job title, where my office was. All of this stuff was my identity. What board I was on and what group I was involved with. All of that I had defined myself as, hey, look at me. I have the perfect persona. Look, I've got all the check marks. I've got all the titles. And when that all got taken away, I seriously had no clue who I was. I was like, wow. If you're none of those things, who the heck, what are you? And that's when I got into horses.
So how did you go about answering that question? What are you? How did like you already had some experience. You've obviously just had we talked about ice baths earlier. So rather than voluntarily stepping into the water trough with the ice cube, someone went ahead and took an axe and broke all the ice you'd been standing on. But
that's a great way to describe it. If you don't mind, Daniel, I'm going to steal that. So now, I'm just telling you, I'm going to steal that phrase because that, my friend, is perfect.
And I'm assuming that's the housing bubble burst that you're talking about. I can tell you, I was a landscape contractor at that point in time, and I had gotten a contract that I thought was going to make me financially well for the rest of my life, doing all of the lot leveling and fence building and sodding and landscaping on a 500 house development. And like you, dude, that pretty much brought financial ruin into my world through no real fault of my own. They went bust and didn't pay us a whole lot of money, and there you are. So anyway.
Okay. Well, there you go. We've got the thing right there. That's exactly how it went down.
I know exactly the whole thought of I've worked my butt off, and how did I wind up with less money than I had as a teenager, as a grown adult with a family. Anyway,
that's a troubling thought to sit with for sure.
I'm imagining myself with a bunch of puppies crawling all over me right now. We'll pull ourselves out of this hole. There you go. So you move back to the ranch. How did horses as a profession come about after that?
Great question. I'm gonna blame or point or compliment or thank my wife for this, because she was the beginning of this. And my wife has always been a little more kind of woo woo than I have been. You know, I was kind of hardcore cowboy type guy, or just construction work kind of guy. You know, I wasn't really soft or in tune with myself or much else at that time. But after being back at the ranch and kind of regrouping there, my wife invited me to go with her to a guided meditation. And I thought, oh boy, oh jeez, what, a couple hours sitting in a room and thinking about nothing. Like, how fun can that be? Oh jeez. But you know, I wanted to go with her, and honestly, I was pretty spun in life. I was like, well, at this point, I can't be any lower than where I'm at. What's it going to hurt to go look at something different? You know, to go look at what is this meditation thing? Like, I have no idea what that even means. And so I went with her. And during that meditation, and it was a bit of a struggle for me, Daniel, I'll be honest, to find my way into that meditation. Like, I showed up and kind of did the husband thing, you know, I'll hold your hand and walk in the door, but don't expect me to get all huggy and be talking to all these people. And, you know, let's make sure we're sitting in the back by the freaking door in case I want to leave. That was kind of my mentality going in. And anyway, I struggled, but this was a long meditation that this guy was kind of talking us through. And I found my way to finding some quietness. And this is probably, Daniel, one of the first times in my life that I ever really kind of quieted down that chatter mind, you know, and just really let it find something to just, you know, let's just push the clutch in and put it in neutral for a minute. You know, that's let's just idle. Wow. Okay. And so I got in this quiet space, and I didn't necessarily hear a voice or see a vision, or, you know, nothing with this demanding this big clarity, but I just felt a message in my body. And I wrote it down on a piece of paper while we were there. And that message was, if you will follow the Mustangs, they have a journey for you. And in return for following the Mustangs on this journey, they will show you how to create an honorable transition between the wild Mustang and man. And I wrote that down. I'd never trained a horse. I could feed a horse, Daniel. That's it. I could feed a horse. I knew how to do that. And that quote come to me. I wrote it down on a piece of paper, kind of nudged my wife during the meditation, and she was all like, shh, quiet, don't talk. And I was like, but what is this? You know, I had this information I didn't know what to do with. So that was the beginning. And right after that, I looked up, started doing some research on Mustangs. You know, what are they? Where are they? Why are they? What is this? What is this wild horse? What does this mean? And you know, a few months later, I'm at a BLM adoption center, and I'm adopting 2 wild horses and bringing them back to the ranch, because I know nothing about horses, and that's a great way to start your horsemanship journey, is go get a horse that knows absolutely nothing about humans, and then you two just go knock it out of the park together.
You can learn together. Yeah. Oh, well, is there any chance in 5 years that you're going to look back and go, I was supposed to get a car dealership? That was,
dude, I've never thought that. Maybe I took a left when I meant to take a right.
Followed the wrong Mustang there. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, so you do something that I'm sure you and I would just cringe at right now, of the let's take a relatively novice horse person, and not only are we going to get them a green horse, but we're going to get them a wild green horse.
Dude.
So how you survived that somehow. So how did you survive that?
Ooh, I did, but it wasn't without pain and suffering. I assure you of that. After I got those Mustangs back to the ranch and was just kind of there, I told my wife, I was like, honey, we're already at the bottom, and we didn't die. Like, it's kind of, you know, I use an analogy of an airplane having kind of a crash landing. It's scary as hell until everything stops moving, and then you figure out you're still alive. You're like, oh, okay, we didn't die. That was scary as hell. This bad thing happened. This horrible event happened, but whew, we didn't die. So we're at the ranch, and I've got these Mustangs there. And I remember just talking to my wife and going, honey, I'm going to take 5 years off and just figure these horses out. I'm going to take 5 years and figure out what this is in me about these Mustangs and these horses. What does this mean? 5 more years of being where we're at isn't going to hurt any worse. In 5 years, I can still step forward and I'm not going to be any worse off than I am right now. So what's it going to hurt? We're not going to be any broker, we're already here. So, all right, it's just time. And I had never in my life, Daniel, I had never taken time to do things. It was always time was the enemy. I had to get things done. Well, now I was in a space of I have unlimited time. What is this? What is this feeling? I have time. Now I didn't we struggled. I mean, I still, when you're doing kind of day work, labor work in a ranching community, it's not a glamorous job. Mm-hmm. Digging ditches and changing irrigation pipe for somebody else and going out and gathering rocks out of the freshly plowed field. That's what I freaking did to survive, man. I was like, anything, but I'm not going back to business. And I'm going to keep working with these horses and keep figuring this out. So I did, man. I took 5 years and we struggled. But man, what I thought during those 5 years, I was kind of trying to figure the horse out, but I really learned a lot about myself in those 5 years. Because as you can imagine, taking a super high strung guy and go put him in a 24 by 24 corral with a super high strung, fear based, instantly reactive Mustang. And then you two go work your therapy out together. Oh, man. Oh, man.
Gasoline meet fire, huh?
Yeah, buddy. Like, yeah, that's exactly what it was. And it, through some experiences, I really learned that, yeah, I started to have the awareness of maybe this is about me figuring me out. Maybe this horse is trying to show me some things about me. Maybe I better start looking at me instead of why isn't this horse doing, X, Y, or Z, or why is this horse still so scared? I had to really start taking some internal looks at me.
So where does your website is Wes Taylor Science-Based Horsemanship? Where does the science come in?
Great question. So keeping my journey with the Mustang, so I'm still following that meditation message that I got of follow the Mustangs. It was very prominent to me to follow, not to take the Mustangs anywhere, but to follow the Mustangs. So I'm still on that journey. I'm still kind of defining and figuring what that means each step as I go, but I'm following the Mustangs. So at this time, I'm at the ranch. I'm starting to work a few horses, kind of feeling okay with it. I'm starting to, get a horse that I can kind of ride here and there. So I did what a lot of us do, and I signed up for one of the Mustang makeover competitions. There you go. You're just barely learning some horsemanship. Let's go put it in front of a few hundred people and see how you do under pressure. Let's go see how that works. And so there was a local competition here in my area up in Heber City, Utah, called Impact of the Horse. And so I had a Mustang for that competition, and I'm at the competition, and the attendees can kind of wander through the stalls, and you got your stall and your banner with your name and that, so they kind of know which horse goes with which trainer, and you're talking to people because at the end of this competition you're going to sell your horse at auction. That's how they work. You got 100 days to train this horse, and you come and compete together with the other trainers over a 2 or 3 day event, and then at the end of it they auction your horse off to the public. And so I'm thinking, this is going to be great. I'm going to train this horse. I'm going to auction it. I'll, get a little bit of cash out of this deal. Got to have a great time doing it. And what I learned was that competitions fry my brain. So me in a competition setting is my nemesis. It's a thing I'm still working on to this day. So I didn't know that till you get to the competition. I remember being at the hotel room, and it's time to go down for that first day, and I literally wanted to crawl underneath the hotel bed and just go into non-existence. That's how mentally frustrating it was for me I didn't know that though until you don't know what you have till you have it under pressure. Well, I didn't have it under pressure. Anyway, we're at the competition, and this guy's talking to me about my horse, and he'd kind of been following me online. He's like, well, I really like what you're doing with these horses, West. This horse looks pretty good. He seems calm, but I didn't know any science stuff at all. So I'm just doing, YouTube horse training. I'm just trying to find whatever I can find to help me along. But anyway, this guy says, "Oh, I think I'd like to buy your horse." And I'm like, "Well, that's fantastic. What's your name, sir?" I'm shake hands and kind of talk with him. He goes, "Well, my name's Dr. Steve Peters." I'm like, "Oh, well, fantastic. Good to meet you, Dr. Steve. Look forward to seeing you at the auction." That was it. So we go through the competition, and it comes auction time, and I think I placed, second or third at somewhere right there, and had a good horse. And the auction starts, and I'm watching the bids kind of in the stands, and I'm looking around, and this guy's bidding and this lady's bidding over there, and I'm like, well, dang, neither one of those are the guy I was talking to back at the stalls. Like, where's my guy? Where's my guy's going to buy his horse? And it's going and it's going, and it keeps going, and sold to lady so and so. And I was like, well, shoot. Okay, guess it wasn't meant to be. All right, well, awesome. So, all right, let me go meet this lady. Let's get her this horse. And I just dismissed it like that. And so we went and loaded the horse up. She took it home. I get my little swag bag of prizes, for my competition after everything's over. The promoters, you got to, like, I got like a duffel bag, feed bucket and curry comb and saddle blanket, and there was a book and a DVD in there, and I just grabbed it all up and like headed home. I got home and well, let me go see what's in that bag, the next morning over coffee. I'm like, oh, let's go see what's in that bag. I unzip it and like, oh, cool. All right, I got some stuff. And I pull out this book, and it says Evidence-Based Horsemanship by Dr. Stephen Peters. And I look at the picture on the book, and I flip the book over to read about the author, and I see the picture on the back, and I'm like, oh, this is the guy that said he wanted to buy my horse. What? I flip the book back over, and I'm like, well, I got to read this. Holy cow, like, this was just the most exciting thing ever. Like, well, I know this. I met that guy. Holy cow, he was at the thing. He was at the competition. So I start reading the back cover, because that's what I do. Like, just give me the highlights. Back cover and maybe the front acknowledgement, and I'll put the rest together later. I'll figure it out. I read the back cover. Interesting enough, flip it over. I start reading the book, and I'm intrigued by what I'm finding in the book. I'm intrigued that I don't understand it. Like, I'm reading it, and I'm just, the science terms and what he's talking about, the horse's autonomic system and upregulation and these neurochemicals. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I've never heard this, never heard anything like this anywhere. What is he talking about? And this was, I don't know, like 8 or 9 years ago that I met that this happened. And so I'm looking, I go, well, I got to find this guy. Like, I met him at the stall, so we're best buddies now for sure. Like, he said hi to me. We shook hands. So I got to meet this guy. I Google him. I find out where his practice is in American Fork, Utah. He's the director of the memory clinic, this brain center in American Fork, Utah, right next to, IHC hospital. And I'm like, well, sweet. Next time I'm at Salt Lake, I'm going to stop in and say hi. So I had to haul some horses somewhere for something, and I'm pull into the parking lot of his clinic in my old rattly 91 Dodge diesel truck, right? The single cab 91 Dodge, muffler cut out of it. It's just blah, 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 noisy, totally rusted out stock trailer, everything's squeaking and blinking and clinking around. And I pull in the parking lot, jump out in my dusty boots and my Wrangler pants, and I'm cruising in. And as soon as I opened the door to walk into his center, I was just like, oh shit, I think I'm a little underdressed for this. Oh man. This is a clinical setting. Like, this is where important things happen here. Oh, I should have thought about this, but I was already in. I'm like, well, I'm here. Dude, I gotta meet this guy. Like, I gotta meet this guy. Like, I had a drive inside of me that nothing was going to stop me from meeting him. So I just stroll up to the front desk lady and like, hi, I'm here to see Dr. Steve. She very politely, well, do you have an appointment, sir? I'm like, nope, no appointment. I'm just driving by. Oh, you're just driving by and you wanted to see Dr. Steve? I'm like, yep. She's like, you are aware he's a brain surgeon and he's in surgery. He has surgeries today. I'm like, oh, really? Like, I'm all bummed. Like my best friend's mom just told me he couldn't play. And I'm like, well, what the heck? I stopped buying everything. Like, I got off the freeway and pulled into your parking lot. Like, come on, I've gone through a lot of effort here. I want to meet this guy. And I kept talking with her, and Dr. Steve happened to walk by, and I think he might have just kind of overheard the conversation from around the cubicle around the front desk there. And he walked by, and he just kind of casually glanced over and saw me, and he was like, West? And I was like, hey, hi. We've had this eye contact, and he nodded at his receptionist. He's like, I've got a few minutes. I'll see him in my office. And I was like, sweet, there we go. He comes and gets me, opens the door. We go down the back, and he kind of looks down, looks at my pants. There's dust kind of falling off as I'm walking. We head down to his office and go in, and he's like, we start talking about Mustangs and the competition. And anyway, that's how I got introduced to the science and got going with Dr. Steve. And honestly, Daniel, I just wouldn't leave the man alone. Mm-hmm. And we laugh about it today. We'll talk, or we'll do things together, and we just laugh about that first introduction, how that come about.
Well, the Mustangs had your back, man. You were just following them, and
I was just following the Mustang, dude. That is exactly it. And things like that have been happening all through this 15-year journey. The Mustangs bring me exactly who I need to meet at the perfect time, whatever that is.
There were. So I'm not at all a woo-woo person, but I feel sort of I don't know, primed to say this now. So I apprenticed under several different trainers and all throughout my career. Sort of when I was beyond college and really this was going to be my life, I was working for a guy named Steve McCain, and I left that job to work for a guy named Lee Garner who owned a ranch. He was now an owner, and I'm kind of the junior trainer in the whole deal. And as I'm driving up there, I drive through McCain, Mississippi. I literally had to go through McCain to get to Lee Garner's ranch. And so I was at Lee Garner's ranch for a while, and then I change and I get a job in Mississippi. And 5 miles before where I go to in Mississippi, I drive through Garner, Texas. I literally had to go through Garner to get to the next job in Texas. And I kind of have often thought that was,
oh boy,
that was, I wasn't following the Mustangs, I was following the cutting horses. But sometimes you're just a player in a bigger story, right? I mean, there's just
absolutely.
So where does it go from there? You're
man, we talk, and he's sharing this information with me. He's talking to me, and I'm asking questions, but I don't know kind of how to ask the questions. I don't really know what to ask, but he's starting to tell me how these neurochemicals in the horse, how I can influence this neurochemistry, how I can set the horse up to experience these different neurochemical feelings inside of them. The upregulation, the stress and anxiety, cortisol and adrenaline, or the rest and relax, the downregulation, dopamine and serotonin. He's kind of explaining this to me. And the one thing that he said to me after every discussion, but the first one that day that I sat with him, he says, West, I don't want you just to believe me. I want you to go home and ask your horse. And I was like, well, that's exactly what I plan to do, because I don't know how to hear what you're saying. I mean, you're telling me things, but I don't comprehend. I don't know what this means. But yes, I want to go and figure this out with the horse. And so he told me, he says, well, go home and do a few things with your horse. And he was kind of telling me to, put a little bit of pressure on the horse. And then he said, then just back off and observe. Just stand back and observe your horse. And then he started to describe to me kind of what this down regulation would look like. And the key thing that he said was, he says, as your horse is coming down, you'll see your horse lick and chew. And he goes, that licking and chewing is a key marker in their autonomic system. And that's really all I remember kind of picking up, was that one little thing about, all right, put a little pressure and then back off and just kind of watch for the licking and chewing. So I go home. I got some Mustangs there. I got one that's I'm really having a challenge with, like, we're just not communicating good. I don't know how to communicate necessarily with this horse, well, with any of them at that point. I was just fumbling around trying to do anything. So I took this Mustang and did a little bit, I don't even remember what I did. I don't know, maybe I just walked up to him and put the halter on and just, felt a little bit of pressure. And then I was like, all right, now Dr. Steve said, just back up and watch, see what he does for this down regulation. He'll lick and chew. I backed up and just stood there and looked at that horse for a little while, and I'll be damned. Just like Dr. Steve said, that horse licked and chewed. And I was like, I've never noticed a horse doing that before like that. I just wasn't in my awareness. Like I didn't know anything about horses. And so that just fired me up. I was like, he predicted the behavior of my horse without even being here to see it or to know what I was doing. And he was telling me that this thing was going to happen. Well, that just led to more questions and more questions. And then those questions led to more conversations. And then the conversations with Dr. Steve led to me having more conversations with the horse. Dude, that went on for like 3-4 years of me just questioning and going back to Dr. Steve to ask more of, so what does cortisol do? What's cortisol? How does it work? How does it get in the cell? What do you mean? What's a cell? What's a cell receptor? Like, I still don't know these things. Like, I'm totally just regular cowboy guy that can say some science words. So I don't have a degree in nothing but BS. I have a BS degree that many of us horse guys have. So that's all I really had was just that. And so I was just trying to figure out what these terms meant. What does downregulation mean? What does dopamine mean? Well, what do you mean there's drugs inside of the horse? Like, I just was a foreign concept to me. I just didn't have any base for that. So it took years of me to figure that out. But the more I was figuring it out, I didn't have a lot of horse knowledge to hold on to, but what I had, I just let go. I was like, you know what? Let me just put it all over there in a pile, and let me just start fresh with what Dr. Steve's telling me, because this really feels like it matches. It's lining up. It's starting to make sense. Let me just go with this and see where this takes me. And so that was just repetition, learning, experiments, back and forth, until I kind of got something figured out that I could work with.
I'm having a thought that's too funny for me not to say out loud, but I feel a little bad about it at the same time. Are you familiar with the game, The 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I'm thinking Martin Black might be the Kevin Bacon of the horse world.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like, if you know Martin Black and you met him at some point 4 years ago, like, he's connected to every paradigm shift and I don't know Martin at all. I shouldn't be talking about him. I don't personally know him, but that just occurred to me as you're telling that story. Like, the Dorrance brothers, he's Ray Hunt's son-in-law. Now he brings Dr. Steve Peters into the party.
Yep.
Like, holy crap. I mean, he's like the I don't know, in that spider web of people, he's definitely a player in the middle of it somewhere.
Absolutely. And that's actually that's where I got kind of my I went to a Dr. Steve Peters and Martin Black seminar in Durango, Colorado. And I remember paying to go to that clinic. Hurt bad. Just putting down some hard-earned money to go to this clinic. But I was like, the info that is there, I think, is just, I've got to know, I got to go see this. And so, but anyway, I got to meet Martin there and chat with him, and met him a couple of times since then. And that's all I really know of him. I haven't done anything more than just casual introductions. But yeah, what a phenomenal experience to go and listen to Dr. Steve talk the science, and then go and watch Martin, work and talk with a horse was just impactful. Changed something inside of me for sure.
I've kind of always viewed Martin as like the horseman's horseman. Like, he'll never be one of the A players, the big popularized guy. Like you have to be of a certain level to watch him work and appreciate what's really going on there, and how much 90% of the crowd is not seeing. You know what I mean? But he's never going to be the big. I mean, he's hellaciously skilled. I'm not trying to put him down here in any way, shape, or form, but that's kind of how I think of him. Like the horseman sort. Joe Walter to me fits in that same sort of a category that most people are probably missing. Most of what is going on here. But
anyway. I was absolutely one of the 90% that couldn't see what was going on, but I knew I was seeing something. I had no clue what it was, but I knew. I was like, whatever I'm seeing, and what I'm hearing from Dr. Steve and what I'm seeing, I'm like, there's gold nuggets here, Wes. You've got to find a lens to look through to see these. Keep looking. There's something here. I remember having a conversation during a lunch break with Martin, and he asked me one question, and it just still resonates with me, and it's one of my key things that I teach. And we were describing something about setting something up for the horse, and he asked me, he goes, well, what's your reinforcement on that? Meaning, like, well, if the horse doesn't do the thing with whatever I'm suggesting or my body language, he's like, what's the next reinforcement step? Like, what's the next thing you're going to do? Well, then what's the next thing after that? Kind of that stuck with me of like, always have a thread that you're going to go down. There's going to be a spot somewhere you're going to change your game, but there's going to be a little reinforcement or whatever that thing is. You got to just keep going until you find that thing, and you know what your reinforcement is with your request. And man, that just stuck. And I love that. In talking with my, whoever I'm working with, I'm like, well, yeah, you could, let's say you want to ask your horse, to walk forward. Well, what's your reinforcement if they don't? If you don't have your reinforcement in place, don't ask them. We got to know what we're going to do next. If A doesn't work, what's B? We got to have B and then C, and those can all kind of change in real time, but you got to have something. And that was just impactful to me that Martin asked me that.
Absolutely. It also enables you. I'm a firm believer in having a plan, but if you're not familiar enough with the plan and you don't have those backup plans, then you have no ability to be flexible. You just have one question, and if you don't get the answer you expect, you're out of
conversation's over.
Yeah, there are no more tools in the toolbox, and so that's kind of how I view the horsemanship journey, is trying to amass as many tools in the toolbox as possible. So now it's no big deal if I can't get the answer this way. I've got 8 other things I can try, and we'll do it some other way. So when you're working with horses, I haven't worked a tremendous amount with Mustangs. I've worked with a lot of domesticated horses that weren't halter broken and so forth. I find that there are kind of, well, I mean, you can slice a pie any way you want, but let's say there's 2 different camps there. You get horses that are very expressive. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but you're, from the videos I've watched of, you're real big on the lick and chew stuff, and there's a dopamine release. There are horses where you can just immediately get 19 of those in a row in a 5-minute period, and then there are horses where you're working 3 hours to get that first one. So where do you see some of the dynamics of that, and those horses that are really expressive versus the ones that are more stoic or more skeptical, maybe is a better word? Or how do you view that?
I want to kind of approach this on 2 different lanes, maybe the domestic horse and then also the wild horse. I feel I've got a little 2 different lanes, but in the wild horses, we'll just start there, that there can be kind of this internal demeanor about a horse that they're quick to find something that feels good. And so you kind of show them that first release or a few releases, and then that horse is like, ooh, there's the release of pressure, and boom, they lick and chew, and then that horse can just every little release of pressure, it's like gobbling it up, like, oh yeah, lick and chew, lick and chew, lick and chew. And we had one Mustang here I nicknamed him Sir Licks-a-Lot. That was his name, because this dude I thought he was going to wear his tongue out, man. This guy was just licking and chewing constantly, but that was his coping. That was his way of, I had kind of created the space for him to be okay to not be okay, and it was a space for him to try to release this tension that he had. And so, man, he would just lick and chew a bunch. And then we take a different wild horse that is very skeptical or very self-preservationally minded, and so finding that relief anywhere other than in Mother Nature's code or in Mother Nature's rules isn't a place for that horse to look. Not at first. Might not even want to look there for a while. Like you're saying, it might take a while for that horse to really decide, I'm not that the horse is making a conscious decision, but just the horse's autonomic system, that instinctive driven system, isn't going to kind of take the guard down. It's going to stay on that high life preservation mode. Like, Nope, I'm going to wait. I'm going to hang out. I've got my adrenaline on tap. It's ready to go. I'm just waiting for where's my exit? How do I get out of this? It isn't a how do I find some way to relax? They're not thinking that way. So that's kind of how I've experienced it with the wild horses. Some of them will hold that self-preservation so strongly, and you really got to be soft and be patient and just allow them to find a quiet space to start that coming down. And it takes time.
So would you say some of those horses are stuck in freeze? And I'll ask you now to maybe further define for those who might not know. And I'll tell you, I have a pretty science-based audience, I would think, but would you mind breaking down for them what the autonomic nervous system is, and sort of maybe some of the other terms they may have heard before, and put it all together on the map?
So this autonomic system that works in the horses, we have the same autonomic system. So what you hear me say about a horse, our humans were the same way. We've got a sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight flight, or the gas pedal. We can use an analogy like a car. The sympathetic's the gas pedal, and on the sympathetic side we have. And I try to keep things super simple, Daniel, because I'm just a simple guy. And like I said, I don't have any school knowledge on this. I just have kind of real world hands-on definition experience.
Sure.
But in the sympathetic side, we've got the neurochemicals of cortisol and adrenaline. So cortisol is our stress and worry. And I'm sure a lot of people, if you go see a doctor and you start saying whatever your ailments are, your doctor probably say, well, I wonder what your stress levels are. You got probably some high cortisol, right? There's just this hormone of stress and this worry. So cortisol and adrenaline hang out in that sympathetic nervous system. And then we've got the opposite side of that, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is our rest, relax, digest. This is our calming, relaxing, restoring, releasing autonomic system. So in this system, more like the brake pedal. We're calm, more quiet. Our breathing in the parasympathetic is more deep and deep breathing. The sympathetic side is more short and shallow. Slow heart rate on the parasympathetic, fast heart rate on the sympathetic. So, right, everything's increased on the sympathetic, and we kind of look at a decrease on the parasympathetic. What we ultimately want to have in both our horses and in ourselves is a balance, a good equal balance of I can apply the gas when I need to go get something done, I need to move, and I can apply the brake when I need to just slow things down and take a calm break, but not get too wound up about what's going on. So, on the parasympathetic side, the neurochemicals that we've got over there, dopamine and serotonin. And so dopamine rewards behavior. And if you look at any scientific study on mammals or humans, dopamine is required for learning. No dopamine, no learning. A little bit of dopamine, a little bit of learning. A lot of dopamine, a lot of learning. So it's like the learning molecule, or the I want to do it again drug. So this dopamine is very behavior reward driven. And then serotonin balances our emotions. Us humans, we're full of a complex array of emotions. I don't want to try to go down that hole. But with the horses, I hold them just having emotions of fear or safety. Just I want to keep it very simple for me to operate. Where is this horse at? Highly fear balanced or out of balance? Safety is not in the play with the horse. So serotonin will balance those emotions. So in working with the horses, I'm wanting to be more in the parasympathetic nervous system and having these neurochemicals released more and more, dopamine and serotonin. I'm going to have more learning, and I'm going to have a horse that feels safer just off of the neurochemistry. Now, if you're working with a horse and they're upregulated and they're stressed and anxious, they're full of cortisol. They got a lot of adrenaline. Their feet are ready to move. Adrenaline's like gas on the fire to me. We need adrenaline in both areas. We can be relaxed and still need to have some adrenaline to go move around and do some things, but we need adrenaline to kind of get the motor moving. And so a very stressed, upregulated horse that's really cranked up full of cortisol and adrenaline, we describe them as, they're flinchy, they're jumpy, they're reactive, they're, ADD, they're sparking and looking all over the place. And, every little sound kind of gets them triggered. That horse is very sympathetically aroused, very much in the fight flight neurochemistry. So that's kind of my quick version of how I view the autonomic system working with the horses.
Okay.
That
I, I guess what I was trying to bring up there is that the sympathetic has fight or flight, but it also has freeze. And I feel like that's one of those things that
yeah.
doesn't get talked about as much. And just about any time I have a customer that comes and says, well, and tell me if you've ever heard this before, but they say, well, he just blew up out of nowhere. Like he was just standing there fine, and next thing you know, boom. And I think recognizing freeze is one of those things that we tend to not talk about as much, because that's clearly where that
uh,
horse was right before he blew up and went.
uh,
You just didn't
yeah.
notice that he looked like he was standing still, but he was a coiled spring standing still,
Yes.
waiting on releasing. So
Yep. And that freeze mentality, or not mentality, but just that's part of that autonomic system of the sympathetic that, people do it too, but the horse will get so overwhelmed, right? The stimulus in the environment is so much that the answer is just freeze and hold still. Much like, you can imagine that being a valuable tool in nature, because a predator is going to be looking for movement, right? It's going to try to key off of some movement. So if you're frozen still and you're as still as a tree, you might get overlooked. You might not create any awareness in a predator if you're that stimulated. And so working with people's horses, like, they absolutely just get in that freeze mode, and they are just like glossed over. Like, I see it and I can look in their eye. I can just kind of feel them like, woo, stand back, like, hang on a minute. What we got here is a stick of dynamite. The fuse is lit and it's burning super slow. I don't really know when it's going to go off, but it damn sure is going to go off. We just don't know when. Yeah, that's the phone call that I get, or well, he was doing fine, and just out of nowhere, he's tied to the trailer and he just blew up. And yep, that's how it gets described. But that's definitely a sympathetic shut down, very tightly, like all the pressure is just locked into place, and it's just going to take a feather wisp to set it off, and you just don't know which one is going to do it.
So with the horses in that sympathetic system, let's say the high self-preservation Mustang that's burning adrenaline and cortisol, that's a very it's like a hot fire. It burns a lot of energy. So do you find that after you can work with that horse for a little while and maybe you make a dent, that it would be common all of a sudden the next day that you might find that horse is just laid out sleeping, where you never saw that horse lay down and sleep before? Like all of a sudden they have permission and the safety where they feel like they can finally rest. And I mean, they're
Yeah.
just, it's like a sponge soaking up water. You wouldn't believe how much that horse will sleep that next week as they
Right.
finally, like for the
Well,
first time,
it's a lot of what you and I described earlier about after a high intense clinic or weekend. You're speaking and talking. You're not froze by me. You're not talking about that, but you've just been on point for so long, and then when it's finally over, it's like, oh, I just want to hold still and just be in zero space, right? And so, yeah, once that horse, you kind of working them through that freeze point where you're starting to create kind of a new neural network, rather than upregulating to freeze and just being locked up and then trying to do anything with that horse there. You're creating a new opportunity or a new experience for that horse where they can upregulate, but then they can also start to come back down. And once the horse starts finding that safety and coming back down, they like you said, they kind of give themselves permission, or they finally feel like it's kind of okay to do that. Yeah, and then later on, you see that horse laying down asleep, or you walk past the horse's corral, and you know what? Today he didn't go to the far corner when I walked by. Like every other morning I walk by, he goes clear to the far corner, but I walked by today and he just watched me walk past. Just these little behaviors, these teeny little things. If you start being aware and looking for them, you'll start seeing some changes in behavior that freeze doesn't get ramped up so quickly. We're trying to slow that upregulation down so it doesn't happen so fast that they just get locked up.
Absolutely. I tell you what, West, I'm about ready to do the break for the sponsor. but I've been drinking coffee and I've got to pee like a racehorse. Do you mind if we take a pause right here?
That would be fantastic.
Okay.
I'll tell you what, I'll race you to the bathroom and back. Ready, go.
Sounds good. See you in a couple.
All right, everybody. I clearly won that race because Daniel is not back yet. I don't know if he'll catch this in the editing. So if this ends up on the podcast, either A, he left it in, or B, he didn't catch this part in the editing. So, but I won. I probably just didn't drink near as much coffee as he did.
Oh, I am much
Oh,
obliged for that. My eyes were turning yellow, man.
well, that's all right. Heck, that was a good little break.
Any other side chats or anything you want to have before we get going again? Or
Oh, no, man, I'm no, I'm oh, I did. Well, yeah, I'll let you up before we get going, but I beat you back from the bathroom break, so I did jump on and tell everybody that I was first, and whether you'd catch that in the edit or not, I didn't know. So anyway, might be
I,
something you want to leave or to anyway. It was
we'll,
funny. It
we'll
was
see.
funny to
Yeah.
me. So
With two guys with gray hair that have to have a pee break, there's a legitimate race going on there. A lot of people might not know.
you know it. You know it. Oh man.
All right. Well, West, I've got a very uh, proud sponsor for this one in honor of you being on the podcast. So, this episode, we're going to be sponsored by the East India Holistic Horse Commune Astrology and Positive Vibes Center. At the East India Holistic Horse Commune Astrology and Positive Vibes Center, we know that your horse may survive on earthly things like hay and water, but they thrive on positive vibes and traditional Eastern medical practices. Is your horse too frisky or too lethargic? Our Himalayan leeches will remove the bad blood that we've known for thousands of years is actually causing those problems. Maybe your horse is fearful and mistrusting. One of our astrological counselors can chart your horse's sign and find the perfect day of interplanetary harmony for you to begin the relationship you've always dreamed of. The stipulation here, of course, is that your signs are compatible. We can't guarantee a Gemini double world Marwari and a Scorpio owner born in the year of the snake are ever going to form a constellation. That'd just be crazy. But for $8.99 a minute, we're willing to do all we can to help. How about hoof or ulcer issues? We've got tonics, powders, and potions aplenty, and even some crystals if you need serious help. Our flat earth flavonoids are a big seller, as are the Believer's Bells that offer therapeutic benefits via sound of the wind translated by metals from the earth. We say science schmiance at the East India Holistic Horse Commune Astrology and Positive Vibes Center. We know the wisdom and healing of our ancient forefathers and the healing energy of Mother Gaia is what your four-legged companions really need. If it's not too bold of us to assume your horse identifies as having four legs. All right. Thanks to our new sponsor there. We appreciate that. And as always, given the circumstances of the day, we also want to offer our support back to a former sponsor, the Alec Baldwin School of Firearm Safety. We stand behind Alec Baldwin because there's no way in hell we're going to stand in front of him. All right.
If this whole horse thing doesn't work out for you, I think you got a stand-up comedy option that might pay a bill or two, dude.
I appreciate it. My
Oh
favorite part of every episode is getting to
man.
write the sponsor. That's really
Wow.
that's
Yo,
the whole reason.
you couldn't have picked that. You couldn't have picked a better sponsor because all of those things, almost all of those things you talked about. I mean, I've got some experience with something of it. You know, I've had the star charts read on me and all those things. I'm not saying I don't believe in it. I'm saying some of it's harder for me to get involved with, but dude, that was awesome. That was, and you know, if we can't laugh at ourselves, what the hell? I mean, what's the
That's
point, right? I mean, and for a long time I couldn't laugh at myself, dude. I was way too damn serious to laugh at anything, and so it feels good. Well, it kind of hurt actually to keep my laughter in while you were reading that. I was trying not to laugh during your thing, and so it did hurt a little bit right there, but I made it. I made it all the way to the end.
I appreciate it. Some of
Whew.
them are kind of difficult to get through. And absolutely, we got to learn to laugh at ourselves. I tell people that picking on other people and a little mockery and sarcasm. That's one of my love languages. So if I'm real formal with you and I'm not picking on you at all, that's not a real good
Oh
sign.
gosh. Well, I love that, man. And I'm gonna go try to, I'm probably gonna steal that sound snippet from you right there as well. And or I might use maybe we can do a co-sponsor or something because I like that. I might need to
For
get that
sure.
sponsorship.
You could have that playing on when people go to your website. That could be the background music that pops up in the So we've talked about some of
Oh.
the neuroscience and Dr. Peters. It seems like this is a good time to talk about some of the seminars that you put on. What are those like in general?
Heck yeah, they're fun, is what they are. They are fun. During my horsemanship journey, I went to some other clinics and seminars with some other people, and I found it like intimidating. It was scary for me to take a horse and go to a clinic with another guy, and be in front of people and have me and my horse there. And I felt like, and these are my own insecurities. The clinician wasn't doing this at all, but my insecurities, I really felt like, oh boy, I'm going to get picked apart. This is going to be bad. This is just going to be embarrassing. And so I just struggled to really find comfort in that learning space. But I wanted to learn so damn bad that I pushed myself through it. But so as I got to the point where I'm at now, and I remember telling myself, like, West, if you ever get to where you're teaching and sharing and talking with people, make it fun. Make it fun. Find the things that you like when doing this and do that times 100. Make it fun. And I've really held that. So one of my favorite things to do is just what I'm calling a science seminar. So it can be a 1 or a 2 day event, which kind of depending on who we're doing it for. But so it's classroom setting the first half of the day with some slides and presentation, and we're talking about kind of the autonomic system and how all of that works. And I love to have that be fun and engaging. And I love to poke fun at our horses. I love to poke fun at us humans, the things that we do and how we act with our horses, and some of the phrases and that we use with our horses. And so I keep that nice and fun. And then after the first half of the day, kind of that presentation of the classroom, we're going to get a definition of terms. We want to understand what language I'm going to be talking. When we go out to the round pen and start working with the horse, I want them to have an understanding of what they're going to see. So we'll spend the classroom, and then after lunch, we go out to the round pen, and then we let the horse teach. And so then we can show the autonomic system. We can show, the sympathetic fight flight. We can show the parasympathetic rest relax, the licking and chewing, the yawning, and all of these different behaviors and these changes that are going on the horse. And it is so impactful when your eyes are prepared to see that. But if you're not prepared to see it, or you don't know what you're looking for, well, heck, it just looks like a guy kind of doing some stuff with a horse, right? You're just doing whatever. But scientifically kind of understanding what's going on, what's driving that horse to behave the way it's behaving, and then watching how little subtle changes in my timing and the amount of pressure and the release of pressure of just when that all happens, and watching the horse just gobble that up. You're watching the horse just find its way to just lean into it like, oh, give me more. They really just become very, and Dr. Peters termed this. He says, your horse will get addicted to learning. They will want to learn more. That couldn't be a truer statement as I put that over time. Yep, they just want to do more for you. Like they're like, show me the puzzle, show me the pieces. I bet I can put them together. And the horses start putting these puzzle pieces together, and then it's like, wow. And they get that dopamine hit, that behavior reward for doing it. They want to do it again. They want to do it more. So I like it fun. And then I don't necessarily have those set up. We're going to do some at the ranch this summer for sure. But what I like to do, Daniel, is I like to talk with people that want to bring me to their horse group, bring me to their community, bring me into their horse world. And let's do this science seminar, for you and your people. That's fun. I like doing that. And, I get out and meet some people and be in front of people and engage and talk. And it's so fun to have people. They can't wait to go home. They can't wait to go try this with their horse. I'm going to go home and see if I can get my horse to lick and chew. I'm like, you do it. Then text me, tell me about it. I want to hear about it because it's fun. That all of a sudden the human wants to, I want to go try this thing. And I just love that.
Absolutely. And you had mentioned about the humor before and keeping it fun. I wield humor like a sword. I mean,
Me too.
just the people have the same autonomic nervous system, and if they wind up feeling defensive or worried or fearful about how the clinician's going to treat them or something,
Yeah.
just like the horse, they can't learn in that frame of mind. But you break the ice with a joke or something like that, and you down regulate them and bring them right back into the parasympathetic, and they can start to absorb the
Yep.
information. So I
Wow.
I wish more people sort of understood that and embraced it, because learning is fun. Is not it's not It's a means to an end. It's not just because it should be fun. If it's not fun, you're actually not learning, I
Yeah.
guess is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Well, and God, Daniel, and I'm sure your horse people and clients and people you've worked with are similar to mine, and we all kind of got into these horses to have fun and go do relaxing things. We wanted to go have adventures and have these fun things with our horses. We just didn't really know we were going to have to go in and build a solid relationship.
Mm-hmm.
We got to how I got to really get connected with my horse to where I can go and do those fun things safely. And so, yeah, we just want to have fun and be relaxed with our horses, but we need to change some of the things to make that work out that way.
So, with regard to that, do you find that you have more difficulty dealing with your own personal horses versus a customer horse or a horse at a clinic or something like that?
Here's what I find. I notice when I go and get one of my horses and I'm going to do XYZ, whatever, I'm going to go on a ride with a buddy. He'd come into town, let's go for a ride. And I was like, oh, all right. Generally, I'll take a client horse because that's, I've got client horses here and I'm getting paid to be with client horses. So hell yeah, let's go ride, buddy. It'll be a work day for me. Let's do this, but when I take one of my own horses, I start to notice I'm like, oh, we haven't done these things. You're behind on, I've learned new things since I was last hanging out with you. That's what I find. And I love that. I'm like, oh, that little head twitch when I raised my hand to tie the halter or something. I'm like, there's a little sight trigger right there that I haven't worked out with you. Okay. I'm kind of like the neighborhood mechanic. His car barely runs and gets him to the shop because he's getting everybody else's running good. Well, that's kind of how my horses are. They're still got some stuff in there because I'm spending way more time with my client's horse and getting them all ready to go.
I resemble that remark for sure.
So I like going and getting one of my horses and finding those things that I've learned since I last spent that much time with that horse. Like, oh, or I'm aware of something that I obviously wasn't aware of before because it's still in there. So like, oh, my awareness is a little higher now. I've had 50 horses show me this since I last worked with you. Okay, let's me and you let's go work that out. Let's go see what we can do to help each other out with that.
Well, a lot of the stuff that you're talking about really kind of lends itself toward dealing with the person as much as the horse. And we've got a lot of therapeutic type groups that are going on right now and working with veterans and things like that. Have you done some of that sort of work?
I
Uh,
a little bit. I mean, at one point I was kind of looking like, well, maybe this is the path I want to go into, for a career. Like maybe this is where I want to, explore or make a business point out of this and doing that type of work. And so I did some there and something I enjoyed it. I liked it and I kind of found my version of it, my way with what I was doing. But I found that I wanted to do more. Like I wanted to teach people like in a bigger audience, a bigger space. And so, man, I had some phenomenal learning. I was working with a kid. His mom reached out to me and she says, her son, very autistic young man. I think he was like 14 or 15 at the time. And she said, could you work with him and a horse? And I was like, well, I don't have any like knowledge background on how to do that type of therapy or that type of work with your son. I'm just a guy that understands horses. So if you're cool with your kid hanging out with a guy that just understands horses, and me and your boy will figure out whatever we want to do, I'm open to doing that. But I don't know any whatever, just I wasn't in that industry of it necessarily to work with autistic kids. And so she was like, no, that's really all I want. I just want him to have some experiences that he can have safely, that he can just figure some things out or whatever. And I go, all right, well, what's going on? Or how would I be of best value? And she goes, what's that?
I'm laughing because the whole juxtaposition of I want my autistic kid to have a safe hobby. Let's go find wild Mustangs.
Right.
It's just kind of okay. We'll
somehow,
follow that.
somehow that oozes off of me that this is the same. Yeah, dude. I don't really do. I try to do safe things carefully.
We called the crocodile wrangler, but he was busy. Wes, do you think my kid could come play with some Mustangs?
Right. There you go. That's exactly how it went. But man, this kid taught me such a phenomenal little nugget that I learned, and it was so funny. So yeah, I was hauling horses up to a Spanish Fork, Utah. I'd rent the indoor arena, and so I would have clients, people come to work with me and my horses. They weren't necessarily horse people, but they were wanting to have this therapeutic type experience. And so she reached out, and so anyway, I was asking, I said, well, what would be beneficial to your boy? Like what's the struggle, or what's going on with him? She says, well, right now he's kind of having a hard time with sequencing things. Like he can start a sequence, but he ends up kind of spinning out before he gets to the end of the sequence. And that could be like, getting dressed in the morning. Like he maybe starts to get dressed and then off onto something else, and he's outside without a shirt on and ready to go to school. He's like, oh, oops. And so I was like, all right, I think I could do something with that. So anyway, we got playing around, and I set up some tasks for him in the arena there for him to lead this Mustang. I was like, well, let's see if you can go walk around the cone and, step over the log and go left around the barrel and then stop, and, just kind of some little sequences like that. So he was doing that, and he was going up to walk across this log, and the horse stopped and was just kind of looking at the log. And I asked him, I said, well, what's going on right now? What's happening? And he goes, well, the horse is thinking. I'm like, all right, what's he thinking about? What do you mean he's thinking? He goes, well, he wants a Dr. Pepper and some pizza. And he said it just as real like that. And I looked at him, and he was stone cold serious. And I was like, and in that moment, Daniel, I was like, who am I to tell this kid that that's not what this horse is thinking? Like, I don't know. This kid's in his reality, his world. This is how his world operates. This is what is going on in his mind. And I was like, well, all right then. Dr. Pepper and pizza sounds kind of good. And as soon as I went with it, that horse walked across, and he was like, oh, okay, what's next? It's almost as if, Daniel, that horse stopped right there to pose that question and to bring that up for me. And I was like, I don't know who's really getting the therapy here. I think it's me. And I had experience after experience with people and horses like that, but I had to be open to them. I had to have the mental space of, well, okay. I don't want to tell this 14-year-old autistic. I don't know anything about autism. I don't know what's going on in his world. I'm not a doctor. I'm not that guy. And if he's telling me this horse wants a Dr. Pepper and a slice of pizza, I want to enjoy that thought with him and just acknowledge that, okay, that actually sounds good. It is lunchtime, And that was just after that, me and that kid, we got along so good. I could lay out a string of tasks. One thing, go around the cone, pass the barrel, over the log, go to the gate, take your left shoe off, and then walk over to the other gate, and then put your left shoe back on, and then come down here to me and tie your shoe. Bing, 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 bing. He could do those things. It created a safe space. That little question that he asked me, I didn't shut it down. I didn't whatever. I don't know. It just worked. And that was such a gift that I got from that young man that day. I totally take that as a gift of life that I got right there.
Following the Mustangs, man. I like it.
Yeah. I did that type of work, and we did some backcountry men's trip and did some things like that. And I enjoyed I enjoyed that engagement and that involvement with people. It was just kind of a space for me to kind of go through, and there was just something further forward for me. And so I didn't hang out in that realm.
Sure.
I don't know. That's all I know about it.
Yeah, no judgment. I'm not saying you're a sorry bastard because you left the therapy stuff or anything like that. I mean, that's all. I used to volunteer with a therapeutic riding group in this area for several years, and it started off they had a bunch of horse handlers that were there for the kids, but didn't know anything about the horses. And next
Yeah,
thing you
yeah,
know, we've got a bunch of horses that are nipping people and some behavioral problems, and so
yep,
so I
yep.
went and kind of did the talk about some body language and stuff, and then I start volunteering myself. And as it happens, I was working with the autistic kids,
Oh,
and so like we had a kid. I think it's okay for me to say his name. His name was Steven, and he was a low functioning kid, but very, very, very high energy. So like he's a 15 or 16-year-old kid at this point. You had to literally have a hand on him at all times
yeah.
because he would just sprint across the arena at any. I mean, he was that kind of a kid and had I forget what it's called, but he didn't really speak coherently, but he would parrot phrases. So he would watch lots of Disney movies and he would just randomly spurt out
Yeah,
something from Aladdin or some movie.
yeah,
And we found out we would put him on a horse riding backwards.
yeah.
You have him lay down and put his head on the horse's hump and put a weighted blanket over him. And
Oh,
we would lead him around for an hour.
and he
And
wouldn't move.
it would calm that kid down for 3 days. He
Wow,
would have a totally different demeanor for like 3 days. So they were
wow.
coming twice a week, and the ladies that were handling the group were like, we can't wait to come back on Thursday because he's going to need like his new dose of medicine by then.
Yes,
And it took
yep.
probably a year before we discovered that. I mean, we were trying
Right.
different things and stuff, and I don't remember how someone decided that was what we needed to do, but like for that kid
Wow.
in that
It did
moment,
it.
that was the thing.
Do you think it just took his autonomic system and it just felt safe and he just oozed right into it, like everything just was able to just turn off for a moment.
I think so, and not for a
Wow.
moment. I mean, it like I say,
For
it had a
a
prolonged
few days.
effect on him. We had other kids like it struck me as we were talking earlier about the Mustang that takes a long time and you finally break through, and then the next day he doesn't walk to the far corner of the paddock. One of the things I appreciate most about horses is how literal their body language is. If he's not comfortable with you standing there, he's leaning away from you. If
It,
he's not leaning away from
yeah.
you, he's comfortable with you standing there. Like there's no gray area so much. They're pretty much mean exactly what they say. And we also found that with some of the higher functioning kids, like two of the kids that were in that group actually went to college and stuff. I mean, they
Right.
were on the higher end of the spectrum, but they would learn that when I lose control of my emotions and I get mad and I get frustrated, the horse won't work, doesn't
Mm.
do anything. I can't go, I can't turn left. I can't, like, he just shuts down on me. And now I have to get control of myself and regulate myself and calm down and take 3 deep breaths. And now I can get him to walk off to the right around that barrel again. And
Wow.
that's I don't know what the hell it is about it that works, but it works. There's
Yep.
some unbelievable stuff that happens in those groups. And I tell you what, it's kind of nice having more puzzles to figure out and things to learn in the future. Like I make fun of the astrology and some of that stuff, or the kids saying Dr. Pepper and pizza, but I mean,
Yeah.
there's a reason why that kid felt Dr. Pepper and pizza was the
Yeah.
answer. Just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it's
Yep.
wrong.
Yep. Yep. That, you know, I was asking that same boy, you do a little thing with the training stick or a flagging stick, and he just couldn't comprehend what I was saying in it. But he asked me a question. He goes, "So is this like Harry Potter's wand?" As he held up the training stick, and I'm like, "Exactly. That is Harry Potter's wand. dude, he was doing magic stuff for all day with that after that. Like, yeah, it just needed to click to him on what it was. And Harry Potter's magic wand. Like, yep, that's what it is. Because that he would get the horse to move, and he's like, it's Harry Potter's magic wand, and he'd just move it around by the horse, and away he'd go. And I was so the simplicity of it was so rewarding to me, Daniel, just for me to find just the simplicity in what he was saying, because I was so just in my head and had my own chatter going on. It was so relieving and just comforting for me to just go hang out with him and see what we could do together. Hadn't thought about that in a long time. Thanks for bringing that up. I'm just reminiscing that whole experience there, and what a wonderful experience and memories I have from that.
Absolutely. And it is, again, it's something to appreciate, that a horse is a big animal with a brain the size of your fist. The answer is always simple. It never is super complicated. Yep. And because of a trauma I think he had 7 years ago or whatever, it's just simple.
I love what you're saying about the horse, and their movements. And it took me a while to kind of get in tune with what you're saying there, but I like that foot's moving for a reason. The horse is moving. There's a reason behind it. It's fear, or it's seeking comfort, or it's avoidance, or figuring out what that means, instead of, oh, my horse just doesn't like me and he's walking away. Well, not really. Something's creating this separation, and so trying to figure that out and find that out that's the fun part.
Absolutely. And I'm also thinking you could just have that kid wander around the ranch with the flag and name him like Secret Desensitization Problem Steven or whatever.
Yep.
And just let him go.
Take that and make sure I got a piece of pizza and a Dr. Pepper in the barn when he's done.
He works cheap. Absolutely.
Oh, it was so cool. So cool.
Well, what kind of are your future plans for moving forward with the ranch and what you're doing right now? And I know some of that is dependent upon where the public takes you and where the Mustangs take you, but do you have we're trying to do this and this and this in the next 5 years or anything like that?
I'm trying to really keep myself kind of reined in from trying to schedule or say too much. I'm really loving just being in a flow kind of state of like with what I'm doing. And that can seem really scary because you don't always know what's gonna work, or I don't know how the hell we're gonna pay the mortgage next month, but let's just keep flowing, right? Let's just keep trying to do our thing or keep following along with the Mustang. But it's worked for me for 15 years and it's getting better. Everything is just better. And so I'm loving that. But I really just, me being out in a public, being more public that's just the next journey. I don't know what that means exactly, but it's just something more in the public arena, the public space, whether it's speaking, teaching, demonstrations. I've got some potential work coming up on developing some therapy programs that I'm being talked to about, putting a program together for teenagers or young men or young women, and using the science and horses. So I think we're going to end up developing a few programs this year that will be very beneficial that way. And so I'm just kind of flowing with what's the next opportunity. And I just, somebody reaches out and says, hey, West, I want to talk to you about doing XYZ. I want to have a conversation and just see where that might lead.
Absolutely. Do you have any thoughts on a book or something like that coming up? Or I actually get told that a lot, like, man, you should write a book, because I get sharing stories, or we're maybe sitting around the campfire at the ranch at night with a group, and somebody will say, hey, tell this story or that story or something. And I would love to write a book. I'm getting better at like sitting down, taking the time to sit down indoors and like do this kind of stuff. So I think that'll naturally kind of evolve out of me for sure. Something along that line. So I'm doing an exciting thing here coming up that I'm sure I'm doing a TEDx talk. Oh, hell.
March. And that's like, wow, what is this opportunity? And then just having things like this come along and me just leaning in and jumping in and saying, well, for sure, yeah, let's do that. I'm enjoying that. I'm just enjoying doing whatever comes up that feels good, that also is scary. Like I got, the TEDx that's scary. I'm in the middle of that right now, but what a fun thing. They're coaching me on, public speaking and getting my dialogue right and the tone, inflection in my voice, and learning lots of new things, cool things to have on stage and be present that way. So I'm just really enjoying fun new things, whatever that
Absolutely.
might be, whatever somebody. And the Mustang will bring something along. Like last year, we had a few some Mustang people reach out and say, "Hey, Wes, would you come up to our area? We've got some trouble, Mustangs, this, that, XYZ, and could you do it like a 2-day clinic with us in our group?" And I love that's fun. I want to go somewhere else, and take my wife with me, and we get an Airbnb and kind of hang out in the area and look
Hmm.
around. I'm enjoying working and enjoying a good lifestyle while I'm doing it. It's been fun. I like doing that. So if somebody wants to do that, let's talk.
I have that kind of brings me up. I also travel with my wife as often as I possibly can, and she always has a knack of finding like some little local flavor or something. So we did a clinic in South Carolina, which is like 13 and a half hours from us a couple of years ago. And she went to looking up a beach. We're right there on the Atlantic. Neither of us have ever put our feet in the Atlantic, so we decided we'd stay an extra day. She found this little town and like this local hole in the wall
Yeah.
place to eat called Chico Freo, which is Ugly Boy. And
Yeah.
it's like a house, and you're basically eating in the backyard, and they turned the back porch into a bar. And
Isn't that cool?
best pork tacos I have ever eaten in my entire life at that place. It was awesome. Kind of having that nice little beer in the backyard, a little time with
Yeah.
her. The kids aren't there.
Yeah.
The clinic's over. Now I can relax. It was a beautiful thing. And just as a weird aside, because I love weird asides, I'm not at all familiar with drugs or anything like that, but there was a guy there. We're sitting at a little table right by the street, and he comes up with like 8 or 9 solo cups that he has picked out of the trash, and he puts them up on the fence, and he starts mixing. Like one of these is an ice cream cup, and he's pouring that. He's got an old tea bag out of another thing, and he's like mixing him a cocktail out
Oh
of these
boy.
cups. And this
Oh boy.
guy, I don't know what if that was mushrooms or what the hell he might have been on. He's 4 feet away from me, and he has no clue I'm there. He is in his own world, mixing this cocktail that is guaranteed to make him sick as can be in a little
Yep.
while. I spent 20 minutes just watching that guy, and it was like the most cathartic. Just, I don't, I don't know how to explain it, but like I think about that guy all the time. Just what, and how did the universe put me in a backyard of the ugly
Right.
house with the best
Just
pork tacos in the world, watching this guy, and it's been just infinitely interesting to me for several years
I
afterwards. So
love I love life. Isn't that something like you couldn't have created, you couldn't have engineered that, Dan. You couldn't have said, you know what, I want to have this really weird experience of observing human behavior and have the best pork taco of my life. Like you can't engineer that.
absolutely. And you want to know, it got better. Then, after he's been 20 minutes on making his little drink, he drinks his drink. And then he walks over to a car right there, and he opens the passenger door, and he gets inside and he sits in the car with the door open. And I'm thinking, like, this dude has just sat in some random stranger's car, and they're going to walk back here in a minute and find this
We're gonna
guy.
we're gonna we're gonna see part
Yeah,
two of this
this is
show.
going to get better. Yeah, exactly. So, and then he goes and he opens the hatchback. He walks around, he gets in the driver's seat, he backs into the street and drives away. I guess that was his car. I don't know. I'm glad we weren't driving on the roads with him, but anyway, I think about that guy at least once a week.
Oh man. You know what? And I don't know if this will apply or not, Daniel, but it come up while you was telling the story there. But one of the kind of a self awareness or part of me that I've been working on in myself is trying to see myself in others. Like so I tell myself there's a piece of me in everybody. So so there might be somebody that's really annoying to me or really interesting or really odd, like this guy, and mixing up this drink. And for me to have the perspective or a little awareness, like, man, there's a piece of me in everybody. So there's a part of me that is that guy. There's a part of me that is that. And I love just observing human behaviors and trying to kind of find the parts of me that are maybe in these other humans, just to observe that behavior. And I find it just weirdly fascinating. And I can just sit and observe and watch and just let my mind just chew on thoughts about that for a long time. I could sit and watch that guy. I'd have watched everything, man. I'd have just been like, oh man, you can't get entertainment like this anywhere. Like this is worth watching. Something's here. I don't know what it is, but something's here.
Absolutely. We just booked a couple of clinics a couple of days ago, and one of the ladies is apologizing to me on the flight they've booked for me. I've got a 2-hour layover in Atlanta. And I'm like, lady, you don't understand. That's
no worries.
The most interesting part of my trips. Sitting in that airport. Do you know how many weird people are going to be walking in front of me for 2 hours? Like, that's not going to be a problem at all. I promise. I'm good.
I dig it. I dig it too, man. I'll get all comfy and just sit back and be like, what's going on with that guy? Or what's this guy? I can do that for hours. Yep.
I met a guy one time. He's just random dude sitting next to me, and he's reading a magazine about catching huge catfish or something like that. And I like fishing and all, and I'm bored. I struck up a little conversation. He teaches bomb detection for the FBI. I had the most interesting hour and a half conversation with that guy you can imagine. And here I am thinking he's a redneck catching big catfish. You know?
Isn't that something? Oh man, I love that. I love that you just don't know what this person's story is or what their thing is. You just don't know.
Take a guess how many bombs go off in the United States in the course of a year.
Oh gosh, I wouldn't even know. I mean, I don't ever really hear of any, but
according to him, it's over 10,000.
Whoa, I was gonna say like 50 or 100 or something.
That was kind of my thing too. And I don't know what they count as bombs necessarily, but I mean,
wow.
Anyway, it was a very interesting conversation.
Wow.
Well, part of what we said kind of brings me back to the Mustangs. That you had talked earlier a little bit about the divergence of, I guess, what we might call domesticated horses versus Mustangs. So do you work with very many domestic horses, and what similarities and differences do you see between the two?
Yeah. Yes, I've worked with, and I'll even say probably less domestics than I have just wild Mustangs. So it's not a big number, but the biggest thing that I noticed in as just kind of a general rule is that life preservation is much lower in a domestic horse. You know, it's kind of that high flight, that super high edgy awareness that's in the Mustang is very subdued or very, I guess it's kind of been bred out in a sense. It's just lower. It's just a lower
sensitivity.
Trigger. Yeah, sensitivity or trigger to it. So I noticed that, and even with the Mustangs, though, trauma getting in a horse. I don't know, maybe I noticed that kind of maybe more in some of the domestic horses. I think that's just because I worked with the domestic horses kind of in search of trauma. I was kind of wanting to understand trauma in horses, to understand trauma in humans, so that I could, release some trauma from myself and my wife, our relationship. And so I was kind of studying trauma, and so I found that in some domestic horses, that and just trying to undo that was an interesting experience. I kind of went off of what you said there, Daniel, but
no. Isn't it interesting that all the trauma seems to be man-made too, right? You don't see the same kind of stuff.
Yes, I think okay. I think that was kind of the
both in the marriage and in the horse.
Yeah. Very true. Very true, man. So I guess I appreciated, me kind of learning and my craft or my trade with the wild horses, in that I was getting as much of a real and raw representation of Mother Nature as possible. Because working with a wild horse and then working with, let's just say, a wild domestic horse, or a horse that hasn't been handled, maybe it's been bred on the farm or whatever, you do two totally different experiences. This wild horse, that life preservation is very high, very keen, very sensitive. And then that domestic horse, just the breeding of it is just very much at a lower level. But I really liked understanding and putting the science under application with the wild horse, because it was so dynamic. my body language, my presentation to the horse had to be so spot on because they were so flighty, so reactive. And a domestic horse would have been way more forgiving or way more loose in that learning. It would have just been,
Mm-hmm.
it would have taken longer, I think. So
Sure.
working with the wild horses, it was so dynamic and so on point and so flighty, and you were so close to just a catastrophe almost, that you just had to be laser focused and just really laser focused and super calm. Like, man, I got to keep my energy way down because if this ups one little tick, man, this horse is, we're over the top. And so it really taught me a lot of self regulation for myself, for sure.
Absolutely. I know when I was younger and starting lots of horses, kind of starting to start lots of horses, I'm 19 and full of testosterone and all of that stuff. And I remember those moments when I realized that I'm causing a lot of this, whether I think I'm intimidating to the horse or not. If I will consciously try not to be, the results are significantly different. And so that one of my sort of epiphanies was that it doesn't matter whether I think I'm putting too much pressure on the horse or not. It only matters whether the horse thinks I'm putting too much pressure on the horse or not. And,
Yeah,
and the fact that the other 18 had no problem with what I'm doing right now is not relevant right now at all. That one does, so you have to start.
Yep. That was a struggle for me to kind of find that myself too, because I was like, oh, well, this worked before, so let me just try it a little harder. Let's just push through it a little more. And and we come up with a good quote at the ranch based off of that I'm sure you've heard. I don't think I made this up necessarily, but pain is a great teacher. And I've let that resonate and marinate with me every time. And it took me a while, but it got to a point where I wanted to be so aware of my own physical pain. Like, even if I, just kind of pulled a nail back and hooked it on the saddle horn, you're reaching up and you kind of poke or something, you twist a nail back. And I would stop and be like, pain is a great teacher. I just felt pain. What was I doing? What was I thinking before I felt the pain? Where was I mentally? What was going on? What was I doing physically? What was I feeling emotionally? I would start kind of rewinding it to try to dissect that and find that out, because I got into a pretty big wreck with a horse during my finding this this path, and that was a key moment for me. It was like, okay, I got to figure some stuff out. I can't go through this again. I can't have this type of an experience again.
You're stimulating a lot of different questions. I guess I'm going to back up a little bit with the Mustangs because I have a couple of curiosities there.
Yeah.
And please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here. There was a period where I got pretty interested in the Mustangs, and I did a lot of research on the BLM and sort of the program. But that's been years ago, and so my memory of details is rusty at this point. So my recollection is that most of the Mustangs are actually captive, and they're in the holding pens and so forth, and there are far fewer actually out on the range wild than what we tend to think. And so I'm wondering if that's true, and maybe it's no longer true, or maybe I'm just misremembering. And you may not even have access to this information, but
yeah, I don't know that I know the exact numbers.
But have you seen a difference? Let's say you're going to get two Mustangs, A and B. A was gathered from the wild and was born there and so forth last week. B has been in the government holding pens for 4 years with tractors going by and hay being dropped off and people clanking around and people walking around and so forth. So I guess my question is that of nurture versus nature. Like, is the Mustang after 4 years of handling the same thing now as the domestic horse, or are they always that high sense of self-preservation? Like, do they leave that, or does a certain amount of it remain, or what's your experience?
I mean, I'll answer from my experience that it absolutely can leave that this once wild horse can be the calmest, most bomb-proof, solid citizen horse as any domestic horse out there. I mean, I would say that's absolutely possible, and that happens a lot. It's not uncommon. So once you kind of get in the wild horse and you're kind of undoing all of that tension, that fight flight, that high life preservation, and you start unwinding that to relax, calm, and quiet, they're just like any other horse in that type of behavior, that driven area. And so, yeah, they can be. I mean, heck, I've got some pictures and some of the the fun things that I've done with horses. Hell, I took one of my Mustangs into the beauty salon to go get a haircut. I let her right in the door, and we walked in. I sat in a chair, and we put the cape on and got the buzzers out, and she trimmed my hair, and she trimmed my horse's eyelashes. Did a little trim on there, and just it was a fun thing to do. And at the time, I was just like, these horses are capable that any other horse is capable of, and more. It's more of how good is your relationship and your communication with this horse. And then by that, I mean, and so I kind of hold the horse has but one question that's always running in its internal system. And that question is, am I safe? And if the way you handle and communicate that horse, you can answer that question constantly of safety, you can do anything with them.
I'll ask you now, because you seem like a really candid, open guy, and I feel like I don't feel like this is pushing you too far. There's not a lot of people, I'll be honest, that I would go here with. Have you run across some that just were atypical, and that you didn't feel like you were going to get to that spot where they were going to be consistent and safe and so forth, and like we just have, like, this horse is schizophrenic or something? Like there is a physiological difference between the way this one works and the way these other 99.9% of them work.
Yes, and I say that it's hard for me to say that this horse is, let's just say, untrainable, or like this horse is just going to be unsafe. But absolutely, that is a possibility. Those neural networks can be so myelinated, so just hardwired that that's how this horse is. And I can say that, but then there's also the side of me that also knows that with enough patience, and you just follow the science and keep showing this horse how to reward itself for behaviors that are calm and quiet and relaxing under pressure. I guess the question is, how much time are you willing to put in? And are you willing to put in a totally unproportionate amount of time to do that? And a lot of the time with the horses, I am really willing to put huge amounts of time into them, because I'm kind of looking at it as like this science project. I'm like, whoa, okay, you're this. How do I unwind that? How do I undo that? How do I help that find this calm, quiet place? So I take it as a not as a challenge, not like, oh, I'll show you, but more like, can I figure this out?
It's a new puzzle.
Figure this horse? Yeah. So I like that puzzle. I like doing that.
I don't think there's any question that those really difficult horses are the ones that teach you the most.
Oh, for sure.
And also, I've started north of 1,000 horses, and I've dealt with thousands more. I've come about 8 or 10 head that I've come across that I don't think were reachable, or to the point where they could reasonably be out in the world and not kill somebody at some point in time, or something like that. So I don't think it's a high number, but I think it's important that we're realistic about things, and we realize,
I don't have those kind of numbers that you do, to base that off, but I can, through my experience, I could agree to that, there's going to be a horse or two or whatever that it's just not going to happen, or it's not going to happen in the time and the budget that you might have available for it,
Yeah. I would say there's a whole other class of horses that will be reachable, but they are going to take 10 times more input than an average kind of a horse.
And that's a good, you said 10 times, and it kind of triggered my thought here on that. And when I kind of dived into trauma in horses, I'm like, all right, how do I identify it? Like, what's trauma and what's just the horse, and then what's just man's involvement, right? There's this mesh of what's in the horse. But once I kind of got looking for trauma, and I was like, all right, how do I, one, how do I identify it? And then two, what am I going to do about it? I've got to change my approach. This is a different thing. This isn't just the natural horse, or this isn't just kind of a thing that happened. This is trauma. This is in the horse. This is hard. It's in there. That has been a fascinating journey. And let me tell you about patience. That is a slow process to undo trauma. To consistently and reliably undo trauma, it is an extremely slow process. And then in that, I would even be more that the horses that we might say are untrainable is probably a trauma that we're actually running into, unless it's just a complete wild horse that's never been with a person. That trauma could very well be undoable. Yes, I can say that can be very, very difficult to undo trauma.
Yeah, I with some of the man-made problems like that, I kind of do liken them like to PTSD type things. That something will come along that just takes them back, and they're not standing there beside you in that round pen. In their mind, they are back in this. And I find one of the big problems that we have, well, this is my personal view, but I think a lot of horses get classed through the rescues and stuff as abused that really weren't. They're just a little difficult or whatever. And I don't think enough people have really worked with a horse that truly is traumatized to recognize how different that really is. Because once you've dealt with one like that, you go, oh yeah, those other 8 I thought were, no, that was not the same thing as this.
Not at all. And that trauma, and you mentioned that, and that's kind of what got me in that horse wreck. Was this horse had some, this PTSD, these trauma triggers that nobody knew about. I mean, you don't know. Yeah, it's not like the horse shows up with, here's my list of my things. This is what's happened to me in my life, and so might be some trauma here. But and that trauma, talking to Dr. Peters about it, because that's kind of where I got in a little deeper with him, was trying to, like, well, how do I undo this, or what's this going to be like? I feel like this is trauma with this horse. And his words to me were like, it might take 100 good experiences for that horse to start to undo or to make progress with that trauma, whereas if you're just training, it might only be 2 or 3 good experiences and that horse is ready to learn and move forward. But with trauma, it might take 100 good experiences to open that up. And so that's been great for me to be able to have those conversations with some of my clients, or when I'm talking with them about working with their horse. It's like, well, I kind of need to find first, is this trauma that you're talking about, or is this just kind of behavior and handling issues? Because if it's trauma, all I can tell you is it's going to take a lot longer. I don't know how long. I'm just going to say a lot. And we got to have that conversation, and we got to find out what we kind of feel and think that is.
Yeah. I would say with those 8 or 10 that I ran across, and I'm sure I'll come across more, but one of the patterns with them is that there was no pattern. Like what we're talking about is you find a trigger and you desensitize to it. These horses, like, it's random. It could be anything at any time. There wasn't like they're scared of a tarp or a hand up here takes them there, or so like it was just totally, or at least maybe there were so many triggers that it seemed random to me. But I know the history of a few of those horses, and they didn't have really like a traumatic type of a past. They were, so anyway, that I would say is characteristic of those horses that I don't feel like you're gonna get to, is that there isn't a pattern to them. Everything else kind of has that. But anyway, okay, I digress.
Yep.
Well, I'm out of questions for you. I'm kind of, I feel like I've taken up a big chunk of your morning here. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about, or anything I have forgotten about? Do you have a project you want to plug coming up or anything, or?
I not really. I mean, we could talk about other things, but I love getting to know you and making this connection with you, and maybe we can do it again, and we can talk about some whatever else is coming up at that time. But no, I just invite people to just connect with me. Social media, reach out, find me, say hi, and and just kind of see if I've got something that might fit with them and what they're wanting to do or where they're at. That this this science approach is it's a new angle on things, and I'm finding so much value in the horsemanship side of it, but above and beyond that, in my own self, and that's really what we kind of even having our horses is we want to have this self experience, this romantic ride through the countryside, this partnership with our horse experience. But we might have to do our own work. We might have to do some of our own internal colt starting, to kind of get us ready to go have that experience and to be ready to build that relationship with a horse, because our stuff shows up. It shows up under pressure, and being with our horse, dude, that's putting yourself under pressure. It happens. As soon as you grab that lead rope and you're starting to do the thing, are you having some flashback experiences of some bad things that happened before, or maybe some stories that you heard about somebody else having a thing with a horse, and you're carrying all that energy with you? That definitely affects your relationship. So I look at this horsemanship journey as just a beautiful, beautiful space for. Here's what I'll leave it with, and it took me a little while to kind of find this quote of this space, but Mother Nature left a door slightly ajar in the horse's mind. Like there's just a crack, the door is just barely open. And if we're willing and we want to, and we can find our quiet and do our own work, that door leads to a lot of discovery about self. And I just feel like it's hidden in the horse. And if we want to find that journey and take it on, it's a beautiful space to go learn about ourselves.
Well, I certainly appreciate the conversation that we've had, West. I hope we get to ride together down the road somewhere and
Let's
do some more stuff. You definitely have an invitation to come back to the podcast anytime you like. I think conversations like this are important, because I know a lot of people look at us and kind of put us on pedestals and stuff and think I'll never get there. And I think it's important for them to realize that we get knocked down and we have to go out of our comfort zones, and we have to do all of the work too. And we fail. And sometimes it's public and humiliating and all of those things. And we're human just like anybody else. So they can do it. And there's no shortcut. You gotta do the work. You got to be real about it. If you're not willing to be real and do the work, you're not going to get there. So
Yep.
But we have
Couldn't agree more.
We have this beautiful mirror of the horse to show us exactly whether we're making progress or not. So good stuff.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Well, thank you for coming on. And we'll have in the show notes link to all of your social media and your website and all of that stuff where people can go there. So
heck yeah. Well, I'm easy to find. The sheriff's department, the Bells Bond, the guys can find me whenever they need to. So it's not hard to hide anymore.
Absolutely. We'll see you next week for another episode of Adult Onset Horsemanship. I've been your host, Daniel Dolphin.